The discovery began with a silent alarm on the edge of the galaxy, where the Galactic Exploration Corps monitored a region most species refused to approach, a Class-15 death world. A planet so vicious that even unmanned probes disintegrated within minutes. Storms erupted without warning strong enough to twist steel into ribbons. Lightning storms chased metal signatures like predators. And the land itself was filled with creatures that devoured anything warm-blooded in seconds. And yet, on this impossible world, an unknown starship appeared on scans, intact, humming, sending heartbeat-like pulses through the void, and every scientist, warrior, and explorer knew something unnatural had happened. The death world was supposed to swallow anything that entered its atmosphere. But this ship had not only survived, it looked untouched, as if the planet respected it or feared it. An elite alien exploration team, handpicked from the galaxy's toughest species, landed with shaking hands, their armored boots sinking into black metallic soil that burned through metal, their visors adjusting desperately to storms filled with heated sand sharp enough to cut bone. And immediately their sensors glitched, showing false readings, static storms, and impossible energy spikes, their suits malfunctioning one by one, their AI refusing to translate anything carved onto the ship's hull, symbols that looked ancient, curved, violent, and strangely familiar. The closer they walked, the quieter the storms became, as if the weather itself bowed to the ship, an unnatural calm spreading through the air, making every instinct inside them scream to turn back. Yet they pushed forward and reached the massive vessel that looked like a hybrid of machine and beast, its hull breathing slowly, alive with faint heat signatures, its structure made of metal that scanners labeled as unreadable. And one soldier whispered that it felt like the ship was watching them. When they touched the hull, every suit alarm exploded at once, reading both extreme cold and extreme heat, gravity fluctuations, radiation spikes, and then, nothing, total silence, every device shutting down in perfect unison, and raw panic spread through the team. This ship was not just surviving the death world, it was controlling it. They forced open the first hatch, expecting ancient bones or mechanical parts, but instead they froze like statues, because inside the ship, on the blackened floor, were footprints, human footprints, fresh, perfect, untouched by the acidic wind, and a cold wave of terror rolled through them as they realized no human could walk here without dying instantly. Yet someone had walked barefoot like it was a normal day, the steps leading deeper inside, and the team leader whispered hoarsely, "This is impossible, humans can't survive this planet." But even as he said it, the truth was staring him in the face, shaking every belief he ever held about humanity. Deeper inside the ship, lights flickered as if waking from a long sleep, revealing halls made of a material that looked organic, pulsing faintly like veins under skin, and the air smelled strange, familiar, almost like oxygen mixed with something older, something wild, and they felt the temperature changing on its own, adjusting to them, breathing with them, as if the ship itself were alive, aware, observing. One soldier swore he heard whispering, another said he saw shadows move, another felt cold fingers touch his neck though no one was behind him, and panic began to spread like wildfire. But the commander pushed deeper, his heart pounding against his armor as he saw a control core in the center glowing with dim blue light, and ancient symbols carved on it that the AI refused to translate, only returning one result again and again: Terran origin detected. The team felt their blood turn to ice, because Terran meant human, and nothing human was supposed to be on this class of planet. Yet the evidence was undeniable. Suddenly the ship trembled, a low hum vibrating through the air, the floor, their bones, and the core activated, lighting up the entire room with blinding white glow, and a voice whispered in a dialect older than modern human languages, a voice that seemed calm yet carried the weight of storms. Terran presence confirmed. Protocol awakening. The entire ship roared to life, holographic lights shooting across walls, doors unlocking on their own, vines of energy racing through the structure as if blood returning to a sleeping giant, and every soldier stumbled back, terrified of awakening something ancient, something powerful, something human. The voice repeated, louder this time, echoing through the ship and the planet itself, as if the death world were listening, awakening sequence engaged. And the ground outside cracked open. Releasing plumes of white steam, animals fled into the shadows, storms paused mid-air as though frozen by command, and the sky itself dimmed as the ship's engines pulsed once, then twice, like a heart restarting. Holograms appeared around the alien explorers, showing humans walking, training, fighting unimaginable creatures, stepping across burning deserts without armor, breathing toxic atmospheres as if it were fresh air, their skins scarred but unbreakable, their eyes glowing with determination, and the aliens realized with horror that these humans were not ordinary. They were stronger, faster, adapted to death world environments, perhaps engineered for it, the perfect survivors. Then the hologram shifted, showing a human in dark armor standing on a mountain under red lightning, raising his hand as storms obeyed him, and the whispering voice continued, Legion Protocol active. Last survivor, status, unknown. The alien team staggered backward in terror. A human survivor was here, alive, somewhere on the planet. And if the ship feared him enough to awaken itself, then what kind of human was he? Suddenly the ship sealed its doors, trapping the team in dim blue light, as the core whispered, Terran unit proximity, 312 meters, and every soldier's heart nearly stopped. The human was coming. Footsteps echoed outside the ship, slow, heavy, confident, the kind of footsteps that do not rush because they do not fear anything on the planet, and the team huddled together as the voice whispered one final chilling line. Lost Legion Protocol has awakened. Prepare. The door hissed open, cold wind blowing inside, carrying the scent of ashen metal, and a towering shadow stood in the doorway, broad shoulders, heavy armor, faint blue glow under the visor, silent as death, a human, alive, breathing, powerful, staring at them with unreadable calm. And in that moment the alien explorers felt something deeper than fear, deeper than awe. They understood why death worlds were classified as forbidden. Because humans came from one. The alien explorers had only seconds to process the impossible presence standing in the doorway, because as the human's shadow stretched across the trembling floor, every instinct inside them screamed to run. Yet none of them could move as the towering Terran figure stepped inside with a calmness that didn't belong on a death world, his armored boots making no sound, his glowing visor dimming as if reading their fear. And though the storms outside were roaring again with monstrous fury, the rage of the planet itself softened around him as if the world acknowledged his existence, making every alien realize they were not witnessing a survivor. They were witnessing a ruler of this place. The human stopped only a few meters away from them, and though he didn't raise a weapon or speak a threat, the sheer pressure of his presence felt heavier than the atmosphere of a gas giant, forcing the team to struggle just to breathe as he scanned them silently, reading their armor, their biosigns, their intentions, until finally his helmet retracted with a quiet hiss, revealing a face cut from hardship, scarred, hardened, eyes glowing faintly with a strange blue fire that did not look completely natural, yet held a calm intelligence that chilled the team more than any monstrous roar outside. His voice was deep, grounded, carrying the weight of centuries of silence as he said, "You shouldn't be here." And though the words were simple, each one felt like a verdict, making the aliens shrink involuntarily. But before anyone could respond, the ship's AI spoke again, louder this time. Terran Legionnaire identified. Rank, lost unit. Status, active, and the human closed his eyes for a moment, breathing deeply as if absorbing a memory too heavy to carry. Then he said, not to them but to the ship itself, "You woke up, after so long." And the ship responded by releasing a low hum that vibrated through every panel, the entire structure glowing faintly as if greeting him like an old friend. The alien commander, trembling but bound by duty, attempted to speak, asking how he survived on a world where physics itself murdered anything non-native, but the human only tilted his head slightly, studying them, and replied with a haunting calm, "We were trained for this world. We were made for worse." And those words struck the team harder than any weapon, because they realized the truth humans had hidden for thousands of years. Earth itself was a death world, just a lower-class version, and the strongest humans came from surviving that brutality every day. As the storms outside intensified again, crashing into the ship with the sound of mountains collapsing, the human walked deeper into the vessel, placing his hand on ancient consoles that lit up instantly, responding only to his touch, and the ship projected holographic schematics across the chamber, showing timelines, battles, planets, missions, all connected to something called the Lost Legion, a secret human force designed to explore and survive Class-15 environments, a project so buried in Terran history that even their own governments no longer remembered it existed. The aliens watched holograms of humans training in volcanic fields, walking through toxic clouds, fighting beasts larger than buildings, swimming through oceans of acid, pushing their bodies beyond biological limits until they became something more than human, something the galaxy had no classification for, and one alien whispered in terror, You evolved here." But the human shook his head and said, "No. We adapted everywhere." And the simplicity of the statement carried a horrifying truth. Humans were not tied to one world, they were tied to survival itself. Suddenly the holograms shifted, showing the Lost Legion's final mission, their ship entering the Death World's atmosphere during a cosmic storm, then crashing violently, alarms blaring, bodies thrown across steel walls, the ship burying itself into the ground like a wounded animal. And as the footage ended, the human clenched his fists, his jaw tightening with pain as he whispered, "My brothers died here, most of them." And the aliens realized they weren't just looking at a survivor. They were looking at someone who had buried his entire unit on this nightmare planet. The ship's core flickered again, delivering new coordinates and energy readings, and the human stiffened, his eyes sharpening with a mix of fury and fear as the AI said, "Unknown entity activity, level Omega." And the alien commander asked shakily, "What does that mean?" The Terran soldier turned toward them slowly and said, "It means the thing that killed the Legion is waking up again." And those words alone froze the team's blood because nothing on this planet should have been capable of killing enhanced humans. Yet something had, something strong enough to force even the ship to hide for centuries. Before they could ask more, the entire vessel shuddered violently, panels flickering, lights flashing red, the AI screaming warnings in ancient Terran code as the ground cracked open outside, releasing a roar so deep it felt like the planet itself was screaming in rage, and the human grabbed the alien commander by the arm, pulling him up as effortlessly as lifting a feather, shouting, "Move! You don't understand what's coming." And the alien team stumbled after him, terrified beyond words, as the Death World came alive with an energy they had never seen. Storms spiraling toward the ship like hungry serpents, lightning focusing on a single point, the sky turning blood red, and in that moment, every alien finally understood the horrible truth. This Death World wasn't deadly by nature. It was deadly because something here wanted everything else dead. And the only reason the planet wasn't already ashes was because one human had been holding that monster back alone for years. With storms tearing open the sky, the ship awakening to full combat mode, and the ground shaking under their feet, the alien explorers realized they were not witnesses to a simple discovery. They were intruders on a battlefield where humanity had already fought, bled, and died long before any other species dared to step foot here. And as they followed the human into the heart of the ship, they understood a final terrifying truth. They hadn't discovered a dangerous ship, they had stepped into the tomb of legends, and the legend wasn't done fighting. The alien team followed the human deeper into the ship, their hearts pounding like war drums, because every step echoed with a fear they couldn't describe, a fear born from the realization that this soldier, this lone Terran, was not afraid of the storms, the beasts, or the planet itself, but he was afraid of something else, something worse. So, mething waking beneath their feet, and as they rushed through corridors that pulsed like the veins of a living creature, the alien commander whispered shakily, "What killed your legion?" But the human didn't answer at first, only tightened his grip on a metallic rail as the ship lurched violently, the floor tilting as though the ground below had shifted, and when he finally spoke, his voice was raw with memories that cut deeper than any blade. "We didn't know its name, only its hunger." And the aliens exchanged horrified looks as the walls around them displayed holographic flashes. Terrifying glimpses of towering shadows tearing through armored humans, monstrous roars shaking the ship, storms bending towards something unseen, and one by one the holograms showed lost Legion soldiers falling, screaming, disappearing into darkness, until the final image showed their commander, the very same human now leading them, watching helplessly as the ship sealed itself to protect him, leaving him the only survivor on a world designed to kill everything. The alien medic trembled, whispering, "How did you live alone?" And the human stopped, looking back with eyes that held centuries of silence, scars of battles no alien had ever imagined, and said, "I didn't survive alone. The planet kept me alive," and the team froze as the truth crashed into them. This Death World wasn't just hostile. It was aware, choosing who died and who didn't, adapting around the human, shaping storms and creatures to challenge him, harden him, push him until he became something beyond ordinary Terrans, something the Lost Legion had been created to achieve but never fully reached. Suddenly the ground growled, not like an earthquake but like a massive creature exhaling beneath the crust. And The ship's AI screamed warnings in ancient Terran code, red symbols flooding the walls, and the human swore under his breath, its shifting chambers, before grabbing the alien commander again and pulling him toward a vertical shaft that opened like a mechanical throat, lowering them through the core of the ship as the hull above them deformed, twisted, and melted from intense heat, as if something massive had brushed against it from outside. The aliens clung to the walls, barely staying. Conscious under the pressure changes, their ears ringing with distant roars from the surface, roars that sounded less like animals and more like a storm-given voice. When they reached the lower levels, the corridor lights flickered on, revealing hundreds of cryopods shattered from the inside, claw marks etched into reinforced walls, and blood stains that had dried into patterns that didn't look human or alien, but something older, something that didn't obey biology known to the galaxy, and the alien scientist cried out softly, What lived down here? But the human stepped over one broken pod and said quietly, Not what lived, what broke free. And the horror of that sentence made their legs tremble. Deeper still, the walls hummed with energy, the holograms changing to show maps of the Death World's interior, caverns, tunnels, magma pools, void pits, each marked with red zones labeled unstable, unclassified life, and do not engage, and one zone pulsed with violent energy. Readings, a dark mass beneath the planet's crust radiating power like a heartbeat, and the AI whispered, entity movement accelerating, and the human clenched his fists, his voice low with dread. It remembers the Legion, it remembers us. And just as he said that, a deafening boom shook the ship, a shockwave tearing across the structure, sending pieces of metal raining from the ceiling as the floor cracked open, revealing tendrils of black stone rising from the ground like claws dragging themselves toward the ship. The aliens screamed, stumbling back, as the human leapt between them and the tendrils, unleashing a burst of blue energy from his gauntlet that shattered the stone limbs into dust, his armor glowing brighter with each hit, absorbing the planet's electrical rage as if feeding from it, and the alien commander stared in disbelief, whispering, You're not human. But the soldier snapped back, I'm very human. This world just made sure I couldn't die easily, and the weight of those words hit the aliens harder than the explosions rocking the ship. The ground roared again, louder, closer, angrier, as if the planet itself were rising to swallow them, and the human shouted, That thing feeds on the world's core. If it breaks free completely, your entire galaxy is next. And the realization struck the aliens with pure terror. This death world wasn't just dangerous. It was the cage of a monster powerful enough to consume civilizations. Suddenly, the ship's AI unleashed emergency lockdowns, sealing every hall and flooding the chamber with blue barriers, and the human turned to the aliens, eyes burning with urgency. If you want to live, you stay behind me. Do not touch anything. Do not run. And do not scream, it hears fear. And the aliens swallowed their cries as the ship trembled violently, warning lights flashing, shadows swelling under the cracked floor. For the first time, the alien team understood the full dread of the situation. This planet wasn't a death world because of storms or creatures. It was a death world because it imprisoned something humanity once fought alone, something strong enough to slaughter the greatest Terran warriors ever born, something now reawakening. Because strangers had stepped into its territory, and as the human soldier led them toward the core chamber with storms raging outside and an ancient monster rising beneath the ground, the aliens realized a final horrifying truth. They were not just explorers, they had become witnesses to humanity's darkest battlefield, and the fight that killed the Lost Legion was about to begin again. The deeper they moved through the ship's trembling corridors, the more violently the death world reacted, as if the planet itself sensed the awakening of something ancient and hateful beneath its crust, storms roaring louder, magma veins pulsing brighter, the air vibrating like a gigantic predator growling in its sleep, and the alien team stumbled behind the human, unable to keep up with his calm yet urgent pace, every instinct in them convinced that whatever lay ahead was not meant for living minds to witness. But he pushed forward without hesitation because he had seen this nightmare before. He had survived its first awakening, and now he was the only one who understood what was coming. The ship's AI flooded the halls with holographic warnings in ancient Terran symbols glowing blood red, some showing Lost Legion soldiers being ripped apart by invisible claws, others showing seismic waves exploding through the planet like heartbeat shockwaves, and the alien medic whispered with a trembling voice, "How did you survive this?" But the human didn't answer because survival wasn't something he celebrated, it was something he carried like a curse. Suddenly the entire ship tilted, throwing them against the walls as a deafening roar surged up from the planet's core. The sound so deep it rattled their bones, and the human grabbed a railing with one hand and an alien soldier with the other, pulling him to safety with ease that made the aliens realize how impossibly strong he had become. Not because of technology but because of the planet itself shaping him like iron forged in hellfire. As the lights flickered, the walls cracked, and dust rained down, the ship's AI screamed, "Primary containment breach, entity rising." And the alien commander froze in terror as a hologram showed a massive dark shape forcing its way upward, piercing through layers of rock, dragging itself toward the surface with tendrils of molten stone wrapping around its limbs. For the first time, the alien team understood why the human had remained silent about the creature. It wasn't something that could be explained. It was something that had to be feared, a living engine of destruction born from the Death World's hatred for weakness. And as they reached the ship's inner core chamber, the human slammed his palm onto a control panel, waking ancient machinery that hummed with old Terran power, guns emerging from the walls, energy shields activating, and the core itself glowing like a beating heart. But the moment the systems activated, the floor split open, volcanic air roaring upward as a massive tendril of black matter burst through the crack, the temperature rising so fast the alien suits began to melt, alarms screaming in their ears as oxygen levels dropped. But the human stepped forward without flinching, slamming his armored foot onto the floor as a burst of blue energy erupted from his gauntlet, vaporizing the tendril instantly. The aliens stared in shock, gasping for breath in the burning air, as the human growled, "It's feeding again," and the ship's AI chimed, entity strength rising beyond Legion estimates, making the alien commander collapse to his knees because if the Lost Legion, humanity's strongest warriors, couldn't defeat this thing, what chance did anyone else have? The human knelt beside a control node and pulled out a glowing Terran power core, slotting it into the ancient machinery, and the whole ship came alive with violent energy as the AI announced, "Awakening full combat protocols." And holograms of long-dead Legion soldiers flickered into view as if their ghosts had returned to fight one last time. Another roar shook the entire chamber, a sound so ancient and hateful that one of the alien soldiers fainted from sheer terror, and the ground exploded. Upward as the creature finally reached the lower hull, a massive black form twisting, shifting, made of molten rock and shadow, its shape changing every second like a nightmare desperately trying to choose what it wanted to be. The aliens screamed, drawing weapons that were useless on a death world, but the human stepped between them and the creature, raising both arms as his armor flared with blinding blue circuits, energy streaking across his body like lightning being forced to obey him, and he shouted over the chaos, "This thing killed my Legion. It will not kill anyone else." And before the aliens could even blink, he charged, slamming into the creature with an impact that shook the entire ship, blue and red energy exploding outward, throwing the aliens back as their visors darkened to avoid burning out from the sheer light. The battle was chaos, beams of molten rock slashing toward the human, his armor absorbing impacts that would tear a battleship in half, the creature shrieking in multiple voices while storms outside answered its rage, lightning slamming into the ground like spears, the death world trembling from the clash of forces that should not exist in the same universe. And yet the human fought like a force of nature, not because he wanted glory, not because he wanted to impress the aliens, but because he had buried his brothers on this planet, because he had sworn the last time he held their dying hands that if this monster ever woke again, he would be there to stop it even if it cost his life. As the creature recoiled, the human's armor cracked, blood dripping onto the burning floor only to evaporate instantly, but his stance didn't weaken. If anything, he grew stronger, fueled by the same world that tried to kill him for years, and the aliens watched him with awe, unable to comprehend how any species could contain this much willpower and survive. The creature lunged again, ripping through ancient Terran metal, sending shards flying, and the AI screamed, "Structural integrity collapsing." But the human roared back, "Then we end it now," and charged once more, every muscle, every scar, every memory of the Lost Legion burning in his voice as he delivered a blow that split the creature's form, blue fire erupting outward, forcing it to retreat into the cracks below the chamber. The ground steadied for only a second, and the alien commander whispered in trembling awe, You're not fighting for us." And the human, breathing hard, eyes blazing, replied without turning, "I'm fighting so. None of you ever see what killed them." And as the chamber shook again, the ship groaned, and the Death World's core screamed with the rising of an ancient monster. The alien team finally understood the truth. This was not humanity's past. This was humanity's warning. The chamber had barely stopped shaking when the alien team realized the human wasn't breathing normally anymore, his chest rising with the kind of exhaustion that told stories of endless battles long before they arrived. Yet even in his weakness he stood straighter than any warrior they had ever known, his eyes locked on the cracks beneath the floor where the creature had retreated, as if he could see through the molten rock and into the heart of the nightmare that had killed the Lost Legion. And the aliens watched in stunned silence as he pressed his hand against the trembling metal wall, whispering something in an ancient Terran dialect that activated hidden panels, revealing markings carved not by machines, but by human hands, messages left by the Legion before dying, warnings scratched into the metal with desperation and blood, small phrases like "it adapts," "do not fight it alone," and "we tried." And the alien commander felt a cold wave of grief wash over him because he understood this was not just a battlefield. It was a grave. An entire army of humans had died here, their final words etched into the walls of a dying ship. The human soldier traced one message with his fingers, his voice rough and breaking. As he whispered, "Taran, you fool, you shouldn't have stayed." And the aliens realized he was reading the name of a fallen comrade, someone he had fought beside, someone who had died trying to protect him. And for a moment the unstoppable Terran warrior looked like a man drowning in memories he had buried deep under years of silence. But the ground growled again, louder this time, dragging him back to reality. And his jaw tightened as he stepped toward the core platform, activating a hologram that displayed the planet's interior. Massive tunnels of molten stone twisting like veins around a monstrous central mass that pulsed like a living heart, growing, expanding, awakening, and the ship's AI whispered, "Entity evolution accelerating. Estimated full emergence in 22 minutes. And panic surged through the alien team because they knew if the creature emerged fully, it wouldn't just destroy the ship or the Death World. It would spread across the galaxy like a plague of pure destruction. The alien medic, shaking uncontrollably, asked the question none of them wanted to voice. "Why did your people come here? Why fight something like this?" And the human turned slowly, looking at them with a pain ancient and deep, and said, "Because someone had to." And those 3 words carried the weight of a species that had always fought monsters alone, on frozen planets, burning worlds, abandoned outposts, and the dark void itself. Because humans were the ones who stood where no one else would, and his next words carved themselves into the alien souls. "We were the line. And now I'm the last piece of it left." As he spoke, his armor fractured again, sparks flickering across his chest plates, blood soaking through cracks before evaporating against the superheated air. But he didn't stop, didn't falter, even as the Death World roared with fury beneath him. Instead, he pulled open a compartment in the core chamber, revealing something the aliens never expected. A memory crystal glowing with cold blue light, shaped like a tear. And when he placed it into the console, the chamber filled with holograms of the Lost Legion, alive and strong, laughing, training, fighting impossible storms, marching through volcanic deserts, each one radiating the spirit that made humanity terrifying. Hope in the face of certain death. The aliens watched these ghosts of warriors long gone, their hearts tightening as they saw the camaraderie, the loyalty, the sacrifices, and then the last recording appeared, a group of Legion soldiers, gravely wounded, holding the line against the creature, telling the ship to seal itself and save the last surviving Legionnaire, the man now standing before them. And as the hologram faded, the alien commander couldn't stop the tears that fell onto his burning suit, whispering, "You watched them die." And the human nodded, not with arrogance, not with pride, but with a grief so heavy it made even the planet's storms feel quiet for a heartbeat. Then the ground exploded again, a new crack tearing across the chamber as molten stone spilled upward, the creature forcing its way closer, its shadow rising through the floor like a nightmare unbound, and the ship's AI shrieked, "Core breach imminent." But the human slammed his hands onto the console, overriding every safety system, and yelled, "Divert all power to internal stabilizers, buy me 5 minutes." And the ship obeyed instantly, lights dimming as energy surged into the walls, forcing the crack to close just long enough to give them a chance. Turning back to the aliens, breathing hard but eyes blazing with determination, he said, "Listen to me. Everything that killed my people is waking up because of you. You weren't supposed to come here. This world was marked forbidden for a reason. and the alien commander, shaking, asked softly, "Why didn't your species warn the galaxy?" The human closed his eyes for a moment, then answered with quiet agony, "We did. You ignored us," and the aliens understood. This wasn't the first time humanity had tried to warn the galaxy about death worlds, about ancient threats, about things only Terrans had the stubbornness to survive. But no one listened, because everyone always underestimated humans until it was too late. Another tremor tore through the floor, forcing the aliens to grab onto anything they could as the human soldier stood tall despite the ship crumbling around him. And he shouted over the chaos, "Your only chance is to reach the upper deck and escape while I hold it here." But the alien commander protested desperately, "You can't fight that thing alone." And the human gave a small, sad smile, the kind a warrior gives when he knows his final battle has already been chosen long ago, and said, "I've been fighting it alone for years." And with that he turned toward the growing shadow beneath the floor, his armor glowing as the death world channeled its violent energy into him like a storm, choosing its champion. And the aliens realized with overwhelming dread and awe that this wasn't just a soldier. This was humanity's last promise to a fallen family, and he intended to keep it, even if it killed him. The moment the aliens began climbing toward the upper deck, the entire ship convulsed like a living creature struck by terror, the walls vibrating with deep pulses that shook dust from the ceiling and sent sparks shooting across ancient Terran metal. And even though the alien team wanted to obey the human's last command, a crushing guilt made their legs heavy because they knew leaving him behind meant leaving him to fight a monster that had already killed an entire legion. But the human didn't look back, didn't waver, didn't allow even a heartbeat of hesitation as he stepped onto the trembling core platform, his armor glowing brighter than before, blue veins of energy pulsing under the cracked plates like a heart beating faster before a final stand. And the death world reacted instantly, storms outside tightening into spirals around the ship, lightning slamming down in perfect rhythm with the creature's rising roar, a roar so ancient and hateful that it felt like the planet itself was screaming through the monster's throat. The alien medic looked over his shoulder just once and saw the human standing at the center of the chamber, shoulders squared, jaw clenched, eyes burning with a fury so controlled it felt colder than space. And the sight of that lone Terran facing an impossible horror carved itself into the alien's soul forever, because in that moment they understood what humanity really was. Beings who walked into hell with steady steps and dared it to give its worst. Suddenly the floor beneath the human ruptured open, molten cracks splitting outward like the veins of an erupting sun, and a monstrous shadow erupted from the depths, its limbs made of shifting rock and liquid darkness, its form constantly changing like it couldn't decide what shape would kill fastest, and as it rose, its body scraped against the chamber walls, bending reinforced Terran metal like wet clay, releasing waves of heat so intense that the alien team's suits shrieked warnings even from far above in the elevator shaft. Yet the human did not move, did not flinch, only lowered his stance and whispered something so soft the aliens almost didn't hear it, "For the Legion," and then, louder, heartbreak woven into steel, "For my brothers." The creature hurled a tidal wave of molten stone toward him, and the alien commander screamed a warning, but the human reacted with lightning speed, slamming his fists into the ground as blue energy exploded outward in a dome of raw power that shattered the molten surge, sending chunks of superheated rock flying upward, melting through the ceiling like paper. The impact knocked the aliens off their feet above, but they kept climbing, tears burning in their eyes as they heard the screams of the death world below. The monster shrieking with fury, the ship howling in protest, and the lone Terran roaring back like a storm-born titan, his voice echoing through the ship's bones. The alien scientist, trembling so badly he could barely climb, whispered, "He can't win this, he can't." But the alien commander, choking on fear, whispered back, "He isn't trying to win. He's trying to buy us time." And that truth made their hearts ache because the humans they had mocked for centuries were the only species who would stay behind willingly to die so others could escape. Below them, the battle intensified, the human punching through tendrils of molten darkness, ripping apart chunks of the creature's shifting body with his bare hands, each attack costing him blood, each movement breaking more of his armor, yet he kept standing, kept striking, kept roaring like he carried every voice of the lost legion inside his chest, refusing to fall where his brothers had fallen. Suddenly the creature released a massive shockwave, sending shards of black stone slicing through the chamber, one piece slamming into the human's side and tearing deep into his ribs, blood spilling across the burning floor only to vaporize instantly, and he staggered for the first time, forcing himself upright with trembling arms, whispering through clenched teeth. Not again, as memories of watching his comrades die flooded through him. Taran holding a collapsing doorway, Mara shielding 2 recruits, Jex burning alive while still firing at the creature. Memories that had haunted him every silent night on this hellish world. The monster lunged again, its massive arm crashing down like a collapsing mountain, but the human caught it, actually caught it, his boots drilling into the molten floor as blue lines flared across his armor, his wounds glowing with unnatural light as the planet's energy surged into him, and he pushed back with a primal roar that shook molten stone off the walls. The alien team finally reached the upper deck, the exit doors glowing with emergency red, and they watched from the glass balcony above the core chamber, horror and awe freezing them in place as the human and the monster clashed again and again. A lone Terran warrior against an ancient planetary horror, a living embodiment of humanity's refusal to break. The alien commander pressed his hand to the glass, whispering, "Why would he fight alone?" And the answer came from the ship's AI itself, speaking softly through damaged speakers. Because humanity does not leave their dead behind. He is finishing what they began, and those words shattered whatever doubt remained in the aliens' hearts. They understood now, what the galaxy called reckless, humans called loyalty, what others called suicide, humans called duty. Another explosion tore through the chamber, the creature smashing the human into a wall, his armor splitting open, sparks flying from his chest piece. Yet he rose again, slower this time, blood dripping from his mouth, but his eyes still burning, still defiant, still Terran. And he raised his fists one more time, whispering, "Come on. I'm still here," and the creature shrieked in fury, the entire chamber beginning to collapse as molten cracks spread upward toward the aliens. The exit doors slid open, but none of them moved, too frozen by what they were witnessing. A human who should have died long ago refusing to give up, refusing to fall, refusing to let the galaxy face the monster that had haunted him for years. Finally, as the monster coiled for another strike, the alien commander screamed through the broken balcony rail. His voice cracking, "WHY won't you run?" And the human looked up, eyes glowing, voice trembling with pain and truth as he said the line that would echo through the galaxy forever. "Because someone has to stand here." The alien team stood frozen at the shattered balcony, unable to move, unable to breathe, watching the lone Terran clash with the ancient monster in the collapsing core chamber below. Their bodies trembling from fear but their hearts trembling from something bigger. An awe that shattered every lie the galaxy ever told about humans, because while every other species would have run, surrendered, begged, or broken, this one human stood against a nightmare older than civilizations, his battered body, refusing to fall even as the creature towered over him with molten limbs twisting into blades, its roars shaking the ship like thunder trapped in steel. Yet the human pushed forward again, each step carved from raw willpower, his armor now in ruins, glowing blue fissures snaking through every broken plate like veins carrying the death world's own energy into him, turning him into something halfway between soldier and storm. The creature struck with a massive blow meant to crush mountains, and the impact hurled the human across the chamber, slamming him into a pillar of reinforced Terran alloy that cracked under the force, blood spraying across the burning floor. But before the aliens could scream, he dragged himself up again, using the pillar for support, his fingers leaving streaks of glowing blue as he forced his damaged body to obey, whispering to himself through clenched teeth, not yet, as memories of the lost legion filled him, their laughter, their hopes, their promises, their final screams, and he refused to fail them a second time. Below, the creature reared back, its body reshaping into a towering mass of molten stone and liquid darkness with glowing red cracks pulsing across its form like the exposed veins of a dying world, and the alien scientist sobbed, "He can't do this alone." But the ship's AI, voice flickering with static, replied, "He has always been alone." And those simple words shattered the aliens' hearts. The monster attacked again with tendrils of molten stone whipping across the chamber like serpents made of fire, but the human leapt forward, dodging with pure instinct, landing on a collapsing platform as he summoned the last reserves of energy from his armor, slamming his fist into the deck as a shockwave of blue light erupted from him, cracking the ground and forcing the creature to recoil with a roar of surprise. The first sign that even this ancient horror could be pushed back. The alien commander gripped the railing, knuckles white, whispering, Move! Move! Don't fall! Even though he knew the human couldn't hear him. But something inside the Terran must have sensed it. Because he straightened, shoulders rolling back with a determination so powerful that even the Death World storms seemed to pause in acknowledgement. Sparks shot from the ceiling as the ship's systems began collapsing, the AI desperately rerouting power, and holograms of the Lost Legion flickered briefly as if watching the battle, their ghostly faces full of silent support, and the human looked up at them for a fraction of a second, pain flooding his expression, before turning back to the creature with a roar that carried the weight of centuries. This ends now. He charged, the ground shattering under each step, molten stone spraying upward as he slammed into the creature with a final, desperate fury, blue energy erupting from his gauntlets and chest like a dying star exploding, blasting away chunks of the monster's shifting form, exposing its core, a swirling mass of red-black heat pulsing like a beating heart, and the aliens gasped because they finally saw it, the weak point the Lost Legion had never reached, the one chance to kill the creature. Permanently, the human saw it too, his eyes widening with understanding and grief, whispering, "Taran, this was it." Before turning toward the crack in the creature's chest and sprinting with everything left in him, even as the monster shrieked in pure rage, forming a mountain-sized arm to crush him once and for all. The alien commander screamed, "Run!" while the medic sobbed uncontrollably as the human jumped onto the molten limb, sprinting up its surface even as the heat melted through his boots, his armor sizzling, flesh burning beneath it. But he didn't stop, didn't slow, didn't even scream. Instead he used the pain like fuel, each step faster than the last, until he launched himself off the twisting limb and straight into the exposed core, slamming his fist deep into the swirling mass, releasing every last fragment of Terran energy his armor could harness. The explosion was instant, violent, a burst of blinding blue and red light that shook the entire chamber, sending shockwaves roaring through the ship, forcing the aliens to shield their eyes as the monster let out a final scream. A sound so loud and full of agony that even the storms above cracked open, the sky ripping into streaks of white fire as the Death World reacted to its jailer's death. The creature's massive body convulsed, fracturing, melting, collapsing in on itself as the core vaporized from the inside, and the alien team watched in stunned silence as the nightmare that once destroyed the Lost Legion finally died, evaporated into dust and molten fragments falling back into the cracks of the planet. And when the chamber finally settled, metal groaning and fires dimming, they looked desperately for the human, searching for any sign of him through the smoke, praying he had survived the impossible. But there was only silence, the kind of silence that felt too heavy, too final, too painful. Then, through the haze, a shape rose slowly from the scorched floor, a figure trembling, stumbling, barely standing, the human, armor half melted, visor shattered, blood pouring down his face, but alive, breathing, unbroken, and the alien team collapsed in tears as he looked up at them with a tired smile full of exhaustion and triumph, whispering one soft, heart-shattering line, "The Legion can rest now." The alien team rushed down from the upper deck the moment they saw the humans still standing, their feet slipping on molten metal and shaking floors as the Death World trembled from the creature's last dying pulse, and every step echoed with fear that they might reach him only to watch him fall. But when they reached the core chamber they froze again, not from terror this time but from awe, because the humans stood surrounded by the fading remains of the monster, its once massive limbs melting into harmless stone, its roars replaced by silence, its shadow evaporating like smoke under the rising blue glow of Terran energy, and the lone Terran, broken armor, bleeding body, trembling legs, seemed to shine brighter than the dying fires around him, not like a soldier, not like a survivor, but like a monument standing against the darkness. He took one shaky step toward them and collapsed to his knees, catching himself with one hand, panting hard as if every breath cost him a memory. But when the alien commander knelt beside him, the human managed a small smirk and whispered, "Told you, someone had to stand." And those simple words carried every sacrifice, every battle, every ghost of the Lost Legion that had led him to this final moment. Around them the ship groaned, ancient Terran metal struggling to hold itself together now that the monster was dead, cracks spreading across the floor, molten air rushing upward, the entire chamber collapsing inch by inch, and the alien medic screamed, "We have to get out, now." But the human grabbed the commander's wrist with surprising strength, his voice rough and fading, "Not yet, there's one last thing." and he reached for the glowing blue memory crystal he had inserted earlier, pulling it from the console with a flicker of spent energy, the holograms of the Lost Legion flickering in and out as if saluting him one final time. He pressed the crystal into the alien commander's hands, fingers trembling as he said, "Take it. Give this to the galaxy. Let them know what happened here. Let them know what humanity faced alone." And the alien commander felt tears blur his vision because he understood this wasn't just history. This was testimony, proof of the sacrifice humanity made on a planet no other species could have even landed on, and he whispered, "We will share it. I promise." But the human shook his head weakly. "Don't share it for us. Share it so no one comes here again." And as the floor cracked violently beneath them, the medic and soldiers pulled the human to his feet, trying to support him as best as their shaking bodies allowed, while the death world screamed in agony, storms outside collapsing inward like the sky itself was falling, and the ship's AI blared, structural collapse in 64 seconds. But even with death tearing the world apart around them, the human walked with steady resolve, each painful step a promise to the ghosts he carried. They reached the evacuation lift as the chamber walls tore apart behind them, molten rock flooding the chamber like the breath of an angry star, and when the lift shot upward through a plume of fire, the aliens held onto the human as if he were the last anchor of hope in a world built to kill. But the human looked down at the burning planet, eyes filled with grief and relief, whispering, "Legion, we finally did it." And as they blasted out of the ship, the death world itself began to split along its tectonic veins, mountains collapsing, storms dying mid-roar, the creature's influence breaking apart the planet that had once served as its prison. Their shuttle rose into space, shaking violently as debris followed them, and inside the ship the alien crew gathered around the human, their faces pale and their hearts pounding, because despite everything, despite the destruction, despite nearly dying beside him, they felt safe near him, safe with a single Terran who had fought an impossible enemy with nothing but his will. As the death world finally imploded, turning into a massive cloud of molten dust, silence fell across the shuttle, every alien staring in stunned reverence at the human who had ended a nightmare older than their civilizations, and the commander whispered in awe, "Your species, they have no limits." But the human smiled faintly, closing his eyes as exhaustion finally overtook him, and murmured, "We don't fight to be strong, we fight because someone has to." And those were the last words he spoke before collapsing unconscious in their arms. When they finally reached their homeworld, the council gathered in shock as the alien team presented the memory crystal, the final record of the Lost Legion, their warnings, their deaths, their courage, and their last soldier who had finished their mission. And as holograms played of humans fighting storms, monsters, and impossible odds, the entire chamber fell silent, not with fear this time but with respect, deep and overwhelming, because they realized humanity had never been reckless, never been dramatic. They had been guardians waiting in the dark where no one else dared to go. And from that day forward, one truth spread across the galaxy like a quiet wildfire, whispered in every starport, every outpost, every ship. If you find a dangerous world, humanity has already been there. And if something survived, humanity stayed until it didn't.